Is the United States still a democracy? If you answer based on the strict definition, do we have elections? Yes. Does the loser usually leave? Eventually. But if you ask whether the United States functions as a democracy, where the government reflects the will of the people and everyone's vote weighs roughly the same, the honest answer is no, not really. The problem isn't just one guy, or one bad election cycle. It's that we are running a 21st century superpower on an 18th century operating system that has been patched, hacked, and exploited to the point where it's crashing. The question isn't, is democracy dead? It's, is democracy becoming a zombie? Walking and talking, but missing the soul that makes it alive. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. The people who measure this stuff for a living have been sounding the alarm for years, and the trends in 2024 and 2025 have only confirmed their worst models. Take the Economist Intelligence Unit. For years, they ranked the US as a full democracy. Then, in 2017, they downgraded us to a flawed democracy. That wasn't a temporary blip. By 2024, the US score had flatlined, stuck in the basement alongside countries like Panama and Romania. The EIU specifically cited a collapse in social cohesion and trust in institutions. In other words, the hardware of democracy, voting machines, might work, but the software, or the trust, is corrupted. Then there's the VDEM Institute, Varieties of Democracy, which is arguably the gold standard for this data. Their 2025 report didn't mince words. They flagged the US as undergoing one of the fastest evolving episodes of autocratization in modern history. Note the word autocratization. It doesn't mean we are a dictatorship yet. It means we are becoming one. They pointed to specific, measurable declines in media freedom and executive accountability. When a president can fire independent watchdogs and ignore court orders, as we saw repeatedly in the first half of 2025, you aren't in a full democracy anymore. You're in a gray zone. The scariest part of this isn't the personality of any single politician. It's the cold, hard math of our system. We have drifted into a state of structural minority rule that would have terrified the founding fathers. The Senate is the biggest culprit. It was designed to protect small states, sure, but it wasn't designed for this. Because of how our population has clustered in cities, the math has broken. Projections show that by 2040, 70% of Americans will live in just 15 states. That means 70% of the population will be represented by only 30 senators, while the remaining 30%, mostly whiter, older, and more rural, will control 70 senators. Think about that. You could not pass legislation to fix healthcare, climate change, or housing if the representatives of a tiny minority can legally block everything. That's not a check and balance, that's a chokehold. Then add the Electoral College. We are the only advanced democracy where the person with the most votes doesn't necessarily win. This has happened twice in recent memory, 2000 and 2016, and it almost happened again. When a party knows they can lose the popular vote by 5 million and still win the White House, they stop trying to appeal to the majority. They just double down on their base, and it incentivizes extremism. Gerrymandering seals the deal. We talk about voters choosing their representatives, but with modern data mapping, representatives are choosing their voters. The efficiency gap, a measure of how many voters are wasted in a district, has skyrocketed in state houses like Wisconsin and North Carolina. In some states, a party can win 55% of the vote and end up with only 35% of the seats. That is literally undemocratic. In 2025, we saw what happens when you combine this bad structural math with bad faith leadership. The norms that held us together, the unwritten rules that say don't prosecute your political enemies or don't fire the guys investigating you, evaporated. The Schedule F executive orders and the mass firing of civil servants were not just bureaucratic shuffling, they were a purge. When you replace nonpartisan experts with political loyalists, you destroy the government's ability to function neutrally. The Department of Justice, the EPA, the FDA, these agencies rely on independence. If the person testing your water or monitoring election interference is worried about getting fired for upsetting the president, you don't have a government of laws, you have a government of men. And let's talk about the courts. The judiciary is supposed to be the referee, but when one side spends decades stacking the courts with ideologues, and then the other side starts attacking the legitimacy of those courts, the referee loses control of the game. We are seeing a dangerous cycle where the executive branch ignores the courts, and the public ignores the executive. That's how the rule of law unravels, not with a bang, but with a shrug. Now, if you're feeling hopeless, pause for a second, because there is an actual counter argument here, and it's arguably the only reason we haven't collapsed completely. The US system is incredibly annoying to hijack. Authoritarians like centralization. They want one lever they can pull to control everything. But the US is a chaotic mess of 50 states, 3,000 counties, and tens of thousands of municipalities. Elections aren't run by a guy in Washington, they are run by counties. To rig in a US election, you'd have to coordinate thousands of local officials, half of whom hate each other. That complexity is a feature, not a bug. We saw this resilience in 2020 and again in January 2025. Despite immense pressure, the transfer of power happened. It was tense, it was ugly, but it happened. Why? Because of federalism in civil society. Federalism, when the government overreaches, states like California or New York just say no. They sue, they block, they regulate independently. It creates pockets of resistance that are hard to crush. Civil society. Americans are loud. We have the ACLU, the press, battered but standing, unions, and grassroots organizers. When the government tries to do something authoritarian, they get sued in 50 courts by 100 organizations the next morning. That legal friction slows down autocracy. It forces the wannabe dictator to fight for every inch. We also can't ignore the exhaustion factor. Polls show that while trust is low, hovering near historic lows in late 2025, the majority of Americans are sick of the chaos. There is a massive, quiet middle ground that rejects the extremism. The midterm often act as a correction mechanism. The system is designed to create backlash against whoever is in power, which makes establishing a permanent dictatorship very difficult. So, is the US a democracy? I think the best way to describe it is as a decaying democracy. We aren't Russia or China. You can still tweet that the president is an idiot without going to jail, usually. You can still organize a protest. The courts still strike down illegal orders occasionally, and those freedoms are real, and they do matter. But we are in a dangerous gray zone, where the democratic immune system is fighting a high-grade fever. The structure allows a minority to impose its will on the majority. The wealth gap gives billionaires a megaphone, while average citizens whisper, and the norms of fair play are dead. The real danger isn't that a general will roll tanks down Pennsylvania Avenue. It's that we just get used to this. We get used to elections that feel rigged by gerrymandering. We get used to a Senate that doesn't represent us. We get used to a Supreme Court that feels like a political super legislator. We accept a version of democracy that is hollowed out, where we go through the motions of voting, but the outcome is predetermined by maps and money. The bottom line, America is still a democracy, but only barely. It's like a house with a cracked foundation. You can still live in it, the lights still turn on, but if you don't fix the foundation, the Electoral College, the Senate, the Voting Rights Act, the campaign, the finance laws, the whole thing is going to slide into the ocean. The question isn't, are we a democracy? It's, do we have the political will to rebuild the one we're losing? And right now, the answer to that is terrifyingly unclear. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, and only if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps so much. I hope you have a really good day.